So I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Lisa Rodacher. I'm the Assistant Dean for Admissions here at W&L Law, and we're really glad to be able to talk with you about this important offering. We think it's critical to legal education in general, and here specifically at W&L, it's something we put a high emphasis on. But I'm actually going to turn things over now to David Baluarte, who's our Associate Dean for Academics. He's going to lead us in our conversation now. I just want to highlight the chat function within the presentation. If you have questions or you want something to be addressed, we will do our best to work those into the overall session, or we may choose to hold it until the end, especially if we think it will get some good conversation going. But feel free to chat those questions in, and I'll be monitoring things as we move forward. But Dean Baluarte, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dean Rodacher, and thank you all for joining us today. So this panel, as you know, is on experiential education at Washington and Lee, which is an area in which Washington and Lee is deeply committed and has a long track record of developing a wide variety of engaging experiential opportunities for our students, based on the idea, which we believe very firmly as an institution, that in order to prepare you for the profession, we need to engage you with the practice of law. And so we do that in a variety of ways. You're going to hear more about that on this panel. Right now, I just want to give a brief introduction of myself, and then ask my panelists to briefly also introduce themselves. As Dean Rodacher mentioned, my name is David Baluarte. I'm the Associate Dean for Academic Affairs here at W&L. I'm also the director of the Immigrant Rights Clinic. I came to W&L 7 years ago to relaunch the Immigrant Rights Clinic. In that program, which you'll hear more about today, we serve the immigrant community generally in the Shenandoah Valley. And this is an area of real passion for me. I also teach immigration law, refugee law, transnational law, and the clinic is a fantastic opportunity that I'm really looking forward to talking to you all more about. But now I'm going to ask my colleagues on the webinar. First, Professor King. Then we have Hannah Klow, Katie Shield, and Anna Marie Chawanga. And I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves briefly.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming today. My name is J.D. King, as Dean Baluarte said. I run the Criminal Justice Clinic here, which is a misdemeanor criminal defense clinic where students represent folks who are charged with crimes in local courts. I'm just starting my 13th year here. I started the clinic after I've been here for 8 years, so that's starting its 12th year. And I was a public defender before I started teaching. I worked up in DC for several years as a public defender. I'm also the director of Experiential Education, and so I know a little bit about the different clinics and externships and practical courses that we'll talk about today. And I teach things like criminal courses and litigation courses. I'm teaching the course in evidence right now, and I teach criminal procedure and things like that. But what I really like doing, especially, is working with students in the criminal justice clinic.
Should I go? Hi, I'm Hannah Klow. I'm a 2020 grad. I'm currently clerking on the Court of Appeals in Maryland, as you can see my very fancy Zoom room. And I did the DC program during my time at W&L.
I'll go ahead and go next. I'm Katie Shield. I graduated in 2018. I am currently a law clerk in the staff attorney's office at the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit in New York. I just started 3 weeks ago. My fancy Zoom room is my apartment, so but it's going well so far. And I was in the Immigrant Rights Clinic when I was at W&L, so I'll be talking about that. So glad y'all are all here.
Okay, my name is Anna Marie Chawanga. I am originally from Philadelphia. I'm currently a 3L at W&L Law, and I am in Professor King's Criminal Justice Clinic, and I will be talking about my experience and boy, have I had a lot of them in these past 4 weeks in that clinic. I'm so happy you all can be here.
Excellent.
You got many months left, Anna Marie. Buckle up.
So to get us started, Professor King, who mentioned that he is the Director of Experiential Education here at W&L, is just going to provide a broad overview of the various offerings that we have as part of our curriculum, and then we'll hear from each of our alums and current student about their specific experiences. So Professor King?
Great, thanks, David. So, like a very, very little brief history, first of all. So I said I'm just starting my 13th year here. I came in 2008. Around that time, within the 2009, 2010, W&L Law School really invested heavily in experiential education, and we really revamped the curriculum to focus, especially in the third year at that point, on practical education, not to the detriment of the sort of theoretical, but in addition to that. And so we, and that has evolved over the years, but we still have a real emphasis on clinical and externship and experiential education. Unlike most schools, we guarantee you either a clinic or an externship during your time here. Not only do we guarantee it, we require it. So everybody who graduates from Washington Lee Law School for the past several years has done either a clinic or an externship or somehow worked as in an actual practice capacity. So a couple of things. One, you'll find that we have a lot of what we call practicum courses. And these are courses where you're not actually practicing law, but you're working in the capacity as a lawyer, usually on simulations. And so, if you can look through the catalog and see the wide variety of courses we have on that. The idea is you're not just sitting in a lecture hall listening to some professor talk. We have those courses too. I teach some of those courses, but also courses where you're acting as a lawyer, right, and generally doing simulations. I just looked at what we have just this semester, and I mean, we've got a business immigration practicum, entertainment law, patent litigation, social entrepreneurship and real estate practicum, as well as trial advocacy and appellate advocacy, where you're actually getting some experience as acting as a lawyer. A lot of these are taught, some of these are taught by our regular permanent faculty, and some are taught by practitioners who come, either from the local area or from DC, or even we've got people who come from across the country to teach these practicum courses. But it's really emphasizing the role of the student as a lawyer, not just as a passive, not like as a student. And I'm happy to answer all kinds of questions about the practicum courses that we offer. In addition to that, though, we have what I referred to earlier, an actual practice requirement, that everybody, before they graduate, has had some actual practice experience. How do you get that? You're not a lawyer yet. Well, in Virginia, like all states, there's a student practice rule, which allows third-year law students to actually practice law if they're being supervised by a faculty member. And so we use that. We have 6 in-house clinics. These are clinics run by faculty members in a variety of subject areas. But we also have 5 different externship programs. We've got some courses that we call practicum courses, but you're actually representing people under the supervision of outside lawyers. We've got a couple classes like that. And we've got a variety of transnational programs in which you're working in an international capacity, either working with non-governmental organizations like human rights organizations. We've got one course, the International Human Rights Practicum, where students work with human rights organizations in Tanzania or Namibia or a variety of other countries. And we've got a course called the Global Corruption and Good Governance Practicum. That's a tongue twister, but if you take it, you'll get used to it. And you're working there with either a UN agency, or that course has been working recently with the government of Ukraine on some pretty exciting reforms there. So, I mean, I could talk forever about each one of these. Subject matter wise, the clinics, and I'll let the students talk more about the clinics, those who are in a clinic. I guess Katie and Anna Marie have some experience with clinics, and Hannah has some experience with the externship program. The clinics are like little law firms located within the school. Like I said, mine focuses on criminal defense. Dean Baluarte's focuses on immigrants' rights. But we also have a low-income taxpayer clinic. We've got a general civil clinic called the Community Legal Practice Center. We've got a Black lung clinic, which is unique among law schools in the country, that focuses on coal miners and their spouses and recovering benefits when they've developed Black lung disease as a result of coal mining, which is relevant to the area that's not too far from here in Appalachia with the coal mines. And we've had, for the past over 30 years, a death penalty clinic, which is in the process now of evolving into a civil rights and racial justice clinic, and that will emerge next year in its new form. We're currently hiring someone for that position now. As far as externs, and so there's something for everybody there, right? But if there's not, there's externships. And now these are programs where you're going out into the community and working in some various capacity. We've got a prosecution externship where students are actually, embedded in a local prosecutor's office, whether it's a state Commonwealth's attorney or a United States Attorney's office. Judicial externships where students are working with judges. You could go work in a court like Katie and Hannah are doing now. You can work in state courts, federal courts, and that's an exciting thing. The DC semester, I will let Hannah talk about that. That's where students are spending the entire semester up in DC working for a federal agency or some other legal organization up there. We've had summer externships where students are working, obviously, usually not in Lexington, but doing something over the summer and getting externship credit for that. And then the last one is this sort of general externship. We've got this great director of externships who will work with you on a placement. Maybe you want to work in a healthcare organization, and that you want to sort of pursue that as a career, and you don't think any of the clinics quite match up with that, or you want to be a sports agent or something like that. Well, you can work with the director of externships to find a place, and then we have those students working in our general externship there. Okay, the last two I want to mention, but I want to spend less time me talking and more answering questions from folks. The sort of newest is this hybrid model where students are working in a practicum, learning the substantive law, but also representing folks in various ways. We've got two new ones called the Veterans Benefits Practicum, in which students in the past have represented actual veterans, military veterans seeking benefits from the U.S. government. Working with lawyers who specialize in that. And then a Trust and Estates practicum, where you're taking the class Trust and Estates, learning about wills and whatnot. But also we've partnered up with an organization down in Roanoke, which is about 45 minutes from here, working with folks in end-of-life planning, where you're actually able to work with real clients, helping them apply the knowledge you're learning in the classroom to achieve their goals. Those are a few. I just wanted to sort of lay out some of the basics for you, but I don't want to talk the whole time, and I want to leave time for the students and all kinds of questions from you all. So that's all for now, but I'm going to stick around and answer whatever questions I can.
Thank you so much, Professor King. So I'm going to ask the students to share some of their experiences. In this order, Anna Marie, who's a current 3L at the school, then Hannah, who graduated last year, and then Katie, who's been gone for a couple of years, which I can barely even believe. Anna Marie, please take it away.
Hi, okay, yes, I actually have a lot of experience with a series of the clinics and practicums that Professor King just spoke on. I know it's not a direct link, but my 1L summer, I spent it in Ukraine working with USAID, which is connected to Professor Speedy Rice's practicum that he runs at the university with that tongue twister that Professor King said. And I was allowed to do that summer internship because of that practicum, because that practicum exists and because he has those connections. So I ended up working with the US government in Ukraine for roughly 10 weeks, which was quite an experience. I've also had the opportunity to take the negotiations practicum, which is offered at the university. And that practicum was very helpful because your 2L year at W&L, you're allowed to do a series of competitions. And first they begin at the law school, but then once you've done the law school competitions, you can move on to regional competitions and state competitions. So that my negotiations practicum that I took helped me in a lot of different ways. And I've got a fiery personality, so it also helped me to find ways to better communicate with not just judges and professors, but just people on a day-to-day basis. And I've got a, like I said, I got a fiery personality. So that was very important in learning a bit of professionalism. And outside of that, just how to communicate and how to negotiate and bargain for what your client sometimes needs and what the other side, the adversary needs, and how to find a middle ground, and how sometimes you won't find a middle ground. But that was an incredible practicum to take for me. Humble brag, I ended up winning the mediations competition that year, which there was no way I thought I was going to win it because said personality. But again, it just goes to show that those skills that you learn in these practicums and in these courses and these experientials do end up helping you, and they help you outside of the scope of just the school. They help you in your actual life as well. Lastly, I'm currently in the criminal justice clinic. I joined the clinic because of Professor King's award-winning personality. I essentially walked into his office the semester before and stated all of my fears, all of the ways that I thought I couldn't do it, all of the ways I thought I needed help doing this. And although I have this personality, I do get very shy in courtroom settings and sometimes in public speaking. And Professor King was like, this is the perfect clinic for you, because we're going to get in there and we're going to work on those skills, and we're going to hone in on not just what you're good at, but what you're poor at as well. And it has been a ride, and it's only been a month. And I've had so many incredible experiences already, so I can only imagine how the rest of the semester and the year is going to go. But these experientials are so critical, and they put students in a position where you are no longer just acting. It's one thing to take the exam and be in the classroom, but it's a whole nother thing to have to speak with clients, have to find clients. This weekend, I essentially played bounty hunter, trying to find one of my clients for one of my cases. And that was an interesting experience, because I learned that there's a series of investigative tactics that goes into being a defense attorney. And those things, you know, depend from case to case and whatever your situation might be. But this is something I would have never thought I would be doing. And I'm learning courtroom etiquette. I'm learning how to speak to prosecutors and when to speak to prosecutors. I'm learning how to have a conversation with a judge, and how to have, I'm struggling with this, but making objections. When is the right time to make an objection? When is it premature to make an objection? And also part of these are part of the other practicum that I'm currently in this semester, which kind of goes hand in hand with my clinic. Sorry, I speak really quickly. I'm from Philadelphia. But the other practicum that I'm in this semester is a trial advocacy practicum, and that is run by a judge, Judge Ed Burnett, and that has also been another interesting experience, because I bring him all these fun little hypotheticals, which are kind of taken from my clinic, and I'm like, as a judge, what would you have done in this situation? And it's so incredible that we have access to these professors, these judges, this administration that provides us with these real life experientials. So when I am finally a bar licensed attorney and I get a job, fingers crossed, I know how to step into a courtroom. I know how to present myself. I know how to speak with prosecutors. I know how to speak with Commonwealth attorneys. I know things outside of just the courtroom. I know how to do better research. I know how to make defense strategies. And these are all so key and so important. And I wish I could speak from a big law perspective, but I'm not that gal. But I'm sure my fellow classmates who have gone the route of, you know, firm life would also say the same about their experiences and the clinics that they're in. There's a tax clinic that you can take. There's the Immigrants' Rights Clinic that was mentioned. There's BC3, which is the Virginia Capital Clearinghouse Clinic. And other things that have been incredible with my current clinic, or I'm wrapping up, have been the fact that we've gotten to actually work with parole clients. has been an incredible experience, because right now I'm gearing for a parole hearing, and I've, again, never done this before. I have no idea how this works, but just almost learning how the Department of Corrections works and how prison works and all of these things has just been an incredible experience, and mind-blowing and stressful and scary, and all of that is necessary and just a big part of law school. And we're also in our, and I know I might be like promoting the criminal justice clinic, but currently this semester we're also working on an immigration case, a non-capital homicide and a capital homicide case. And those have also been just, I mean, what can you even say? There are no words to describe how hectic it is, how much you learn, and how quality the experience is. And you know, we wouldn't be not only successful students but successful alum if it wasn't for the people that surround us at this university and this institution. I promise I'm not reading off of a script. I actually didn't think of anything before this, so you just heard my honest rambles. But I hope this is helpful, and if anybody wants to reach out to me post this, I'm sure Lisa Rodiger can always provide you with my information, but I hope this was helpful.
Thanks so much, Anna Marie. Hannah, would you like to share your experience?
Hello, okay, you guys can hear me. Sorry, I also have a space heater on because it's very cold in my office. And my judge is kind of messaging me intermittently. Hold on. She's usually not active during this hour, but today she is. So when I was looking at law schools, I actually picked W&L for the DC program. It's kind of the main reason I decided on it, other than the fact that I had such a fun time during my open house and I really got to meet a bunch of the professors. So I knew I was always interested in it. I really want to work in government personally. So my first summer I did kind of some legal aid advocacy. I found that that wasn't necessarily the path I wanted to go down. My second summer, I was doing government work and I was really excited about it. So for the DC program, I applied to a million different government agencies. And I ended up getting a really, really wonderful position. So I was an intern at the General Counsel's Office at the Smithsonian. So it was just me working full-time with one other intern. Sorry, I should mention the DC program is a full-time internship throughout the entire semester. So you work about 500 hours minimum for the program to get your credits. And then there's also a 2-credit seminar you take with Professor Gould, who's just an absolute gem. We actually had our classes most of the time on Zoom. So we were a bit ahead of the curve. And then we met in person about once a month. And those classes were typically just kind of reflecting on the work experience, talking about different strategies, like how to approach networking, how to approach different things, just a million different things. And everyone had a wide variety of placements. Most of us were focused in DC. A couple of people were slightly outside of DC, and then they would come into DC for the in-person classes. I mean, we had one person at Christie's and one person working for the Craft Group. And I think his office was literally in the stadium in Boston. Which was kind of cool. So I was at the Smithsonian. It was an absolutely incredible experience. I don't think it's anywhere near close to the kind of experiences that I had in my summer internships. I think a lot of times with summer internships, there's kind of a program and they're trying to make it a specific experience for everyone. Whereas with my semester experience, it was really just me sitting there working full time. And then I had a really wonderful co-intern, but she was only there about 10, 15 hours a week. So there wasn't a specified program. We didn't have lunch and learns every week, but I was able to receive mentorship from all 14 attorneys that we had in the office, which was actually situated right at the top of the castle, which is a really, really cool place to be. I don't know when they're going to be doing tours of the non-public parts of the Smithsonian Castle, but if you're ever able to get one, it is incredible. I mean, I can't even, it's hard to even describe the experiences I had at the Smithsonian. I really felt like I was a part of the team. So while I did have my 3rd-year practice certificate, I wasn't actually able to practice because in DC, sometimes the laws are a little bit more specific. You have to be from a DC law school, but that didn't really affect anything that I was doing because I was doing a lot of different research projects and memos for the attorneys. I think on a bunch of different occasions, I actually got to accompany the attorneys to the meetings that they were going to. So for the Smithsonian, our client was every possible branch of the Smithsonian, which isn't just one museum. I think it was at least 17 museums. I knew this a year ago. Exactly. And then all of our research facilities. So one day I was going and I was meeting with the head of the Air and Space Museum. A different day, I got to meet the secretary of the Smithsonian, who was just absolutely incredible, by the way. I cannot emphasize enough how amazing Secretary Lonnie Bunch is. But it was just amazing. There would be some days where I would just go into an attorney's office all day, and he would not only help me with the research project, we'd talk through it together, and he would let me kind of explain the law a little bit to the client. So it wasn't necessarily me practicing, but I was just able to kind of gain that client interaction experience. I'm trying to think of what else to say. It was just absolutely incredible. Every attorney was an amazing mentor. Everyone was approachable. I got to work with the general counsel of the Smithsonian, who would just pull me aside and ask me like what kind of places I like to go for dinner. So it was just, I felt fully integrated into the office, unlike how I did during my summer internships, where I was just kind of the intern there. Here I was really, they wanted my opinions. They wanted me to talk at staff meetings. They wanted me to really get involved in everything. I think it might be arguably one of the best experiences I had throughout my entire 3 years at W&L. Obviously, I loved all my classes. I loved my professors, but I mean, how many people are able to say, I got to spend a semester in the Smithsonian Council getting academic credit? I got academic credit to go to museums. Hold on, my judge is messaging me. So it was just, I cannot emphasize enough just how incredible of an experience. Trying to think of what else. So a bunch of my friends, everyone was able to get different experiences. One of my best friends, she was at the Federal Public Defender in Alexandria, and she was actually able to go to court on some occasions. She was actually able to talk to the court. So the DC program is really what you decide to make of it. I knew I wanted to be in government. I've always wanted to be in government. So that was pretty easy for me to figure out, and just finding the Smithsonian was just the absolute perfect fit. Yeah, I got to do a million different areas of law, which has been really helpful in this 6-month bar prep I've been doing, because I'm still in bar prep right now. I hope nobody ever has to go through this, but it was great. I mean, I was doing contracts work, and I was getting to figure out the law and explain it to the attorneys. It's just, hopefully people have specific questions about it. It was just an absolutely incredible experience, and I'm so lucky to have had it.
Thank you so much, Hannah. And Katie, would you please share your experiences in the one-of-a-kind, fantastic Immigrant Rights Clinic?
I would love to. And actually, I could talk about the Immigrant Rights Clinic for days. So I'll try to be brief. Please cut me off if I'm going on too long. But yeah, so I had an incredible experience in the Immigrant Rights Clinic. I also did the anti-corruption practicum and got to go to Ukraine. Went to Albania the year before, also with Speedy Rice, which I think Lisa just sent an article out in the chat bubble there. And I did the trial advocacy practicum as well. So just so many different opportunities. I could talk more at length about any of those if anyone wants to reach out. Lisa can, I'm sure, send out my email or my phone number. But to talk more about the Immigrant Rights Clinic, there's sort of an academic component and an actual practice component from what I can remember, and you can get so many skills and so much experience from both of those elements. The actual practice component is a bit more prominent. You're working with actual clients. You can go to court. You write briefs to be submitted in immigration court. You work on applications for U.S. citizenship and immigration services. So the immigration legal field is complex and convoluted and insane and unlike any other area of the law. And the clinic really exposes you to all of those different agencies and all the different things that an immigration attorney in real life would be doing. And then there's the sort of academic piece where you have a seminar you meet every week. And you do readings for those. I think it was 2 hours. The first hour is like an actual class in a way. You read cases and you're talking about the cases. And then the second half, you're talking strategy, and each team, because you work with a partner, another student attorney on all of your cases, each team can present issues that have arisen in their cases. You can talk strategy, help each other practice oral arguments, all that kind of stuff. So you can also learn a great deal from your co-counsel and the other students in your class when you have 10 brains coming together talking out different ways to approach an issue in your case. So that's something that I took from it that I didn't necessarily expect. I learned so much from Dean Baluarte. We met probably every week. I think I met with you enough that I can look behind your camera and see you rearranged your office in the 2 years since I've been there. I think your standing desk used to be over by the window. So that's how often Professor Baluarte used to have to put up with me. But so you're able to sort of talk out issues that come up in your cases. There's, you can learn a lot as far as client counseling. That's something that I think I grew the most in. Written advocacy, you're writing briefs, you're writing letters to ICE asking them for certain things. So even outside of the court, there's sort of a negotiation or like other kind of client advocacy that comes into play that is more part of what it is to be a real lawyer in the world that you might not learn in law school in the traditional sense or in the traditional classes. So I think I learned a lot just from working with clients. I've been working the last 2 years in immigration court before I got to the Second Circuit. So being able to go into a courtroom in immigration court when I was a student and speak to a judge about a case or write a brief in a case really prepared me for when I was behind the door the last 2 years working with the judges and speaking to them sort of in the same way. I think the Immigrant Rights Clinic experience just prepared me in a way that made me stand out among my peers, among the other law clerks I was with who went to different schools and perhaps didn't have that experience, weren't exposed to immigration court before, had not written a brief like that outside of their legal writing class, where, it's an actual person and an actual case, and there's a different level of import that comes with writing a brief and submitting it to a court that you may not get in a regular legal writing class. And I guess apart from all of that, you get to really be a part of something important in somebody's life. I think that often isn't included in the conversations about, you learn how to be a better lawyer. But I think I also just learned how to be a more considerate and empathetic person. And immigrant clients deal with issues that are in a lot of ways unique to them. They've been through a lot of trauma. I think I learned a lot about trauma-informed interviewing and fact-finding, which has helped me a lot in the real world. And last year I was in Houston, having graduated over a year, or it might have been last year. Time is just crazy with this pandemic. I can't remember when anything happened, but Dean Baluarte emailed me and told me that one of my clients that I had worked with in the clinic when I was a student got asylum. So immigration, the process takes forever. So you might not see the fruits of your labor when you're still a student, but you might see them after. And that was just a really, powerful moment sitting in my apartment, realizing that she had gotten asylum, that her kids had gotten asylum through her. So you get to be a part of that process for another person, which is truly invaluable. And I'm happy to talk about any other experiences or any questions anybody has. You can email me or call me anytime. So I hope I summed it up okay. I don't know. You do so much in a clinic that it's you could talk about it for forever. It's an amazing experience. So yeah, thank you.
That was great, Katie. Thank you so much. So I see in the chat a question from Lucas Baker to all the panelists. And this is a great one. And the question is, how do these experiences in clinics, externships, sort of these practical experiences actually help you land jobs? What are the things about these experiences that appeal to employers? Before I pass it off to the students who I think can speak to this for sure, I just want to note that the clinical legal education is not new. It's been around for a long time, but in the last Great Recession, when a lot of law firms were downsizing and there were far fewer opportunities out there, what law schools heard from the legal market was, you need to send us people with more training. We can no longer afford to have lawyers walk in the door and they've never sat down with a client, they've never prepared a pleading, you need to do that work for us. And so many law schools responded, and I think that was the right move. Fortunately, W&L was way ahead of the curve. And so W&L already had a substantial program, and it grew that program that much more. In large part, again, this is in response to the demands of employers. But with that background, maybe the students would like to talk a little bit about how they have been able to sort of parlay these practical experiences on the job market. Do I have a volunteer?
I can volunteer, or Hannah can go too, whoever. Anna Marie. I just spoke, so I feel like I shouldn't be talking again so soon.
Great. So
Well,
Hannah,
I'll
why
let
don't you?
Hannah go, because she's actually a working girl. I'm still.
I guarantee as soon as I start speaking, I'm going to get a message from my judge again, because she only messaged me when I was speaking during this entire thing. I guess for me, I think what was most impressive is the fact that it wasn't just working. So when you're in law school, you're really working as a law student. I mean, when you get the practicum courses, you're able to kind of step outside of that a bit more. And then in the experiential classes and clinics and everything, you're able to really step outside of those shoes. So for me, it kind of helped me put everything that I've been learning in law school into context of how to actually apply it to practice. So pretty much everyone that I interviewed with was really impressed, because I did so many different things. So we did anticipated litigation at the Smithsonian. I did, so Smithsonian doesn't fall under FOIA, but they have a FOIA-like process. So I really went through the FOIA process. I got to do so many different areas of law and actually just kind of work. And my judge specifically was very impressed by the fact that instead of, you know, my 3L year just kind of having fun, taking classes, spending my time in Lexington, I worked a full-time job, unpaid, in an expensive city. And I was just really able to kind of get that. Oh, thank you so much for explaining FOIA. I apologize. My brain is all over the place with bar prep. So I think it's really about being able to step outside of the shoes of a student and turn into somebody that's a bit more like an attorney, because I think it really sets you ahead of everyone else when you have all of this experience and you're able to kind of say, oh, well, when I was working in a job, I was able to accomplish this, or I helped an attorney do this. I think it's just a lot more applicable than anything that you might learn in a doctrinal course.
Can I add something real briefly? So my first 2 years out of law school, I think I said this, I was working at the Houston Immigration Court, which is through the U.S. Department of Justice's Attorney General Honors Program. And it's a very sort of competitive entry-level attorney program, and you have to apply through a website. It's not like a typical application process where you can kind of just show up, and it's more like in person and all that. So I had to make myself sort of be distinguishable on paper against hundreds of other people. I think something unique about W&L, or my experience at W&L, was that I was able to do the immigration clinic for a semester as a 2L. And a lot of other schools, they offer, you know, some clinics and other opportunities, but they're only available to 3Ls. I have not met a single other person in the real world that did a clinic their second year in law school, everybody I've worked with. And so when I applied to this job as a 2L, you had to submit it like, you know, the summer after 2L year. And I was able to say I had been in immigration, in the immigrant rights clinic, I had been in immigration court, I had been working on a brief, all those things. So I think that really helped me, you know, stand out in that applicant pool and get my first job. I have always credited that experience with setting me apart in terms of that applicant pool for the Attorney General Honors Program.
Can I jump in and say one thing, two things? So it's a great question, Lucas. And one thing I'd say is, and I guess Katie alluded to this, you can imagine an employer looking at two different resumes and wanting to hire somebody for a job, and one or transcripts, whatever. One, it says the student took a class called Administrative Law, right, and got a A. And the other one, it says, I took this class called the Black Lung Clinic and actually litigated cases in the Department of Labor against an administrative law judge, or appealed one of those adverse rulings to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, and I got to argue it. You can sort of imagine what's going to be more compelling to an employer, because the second student got all the same doctrine and substance and knows the same body of administrative law, but actually had to apply it and got to use it on behalf of an actual client. So that's one thing. It just makes for a more compelling message. The other thing is this, like I said, I run this criminal defense clinic, and every year I get some students who want to be public defenders, and I love those students. And so they come and we work on that, and I think I send them out to be better public defenders when they're done. I also get some students who say, look, I don't have any interest in doing this after I graduate. I want to go work at a big firm, or I want to do something else altogether. And I say, great, as long as you commit to doing this 100% while you're in the clinic, let's do it. I love those students too. And those students, I think it's no less valuable for those students who want to do something else, because you're learning, again, not only the substance of criminal law and procedure that you need to do the clinic and represent clients well, but you're also learning about fact investigation, you're learning about client interviewing and client relationships, and probably most valuable of all, you're learning sort of the strategic thinking that goes into what can be fairly complex cases, right? And so, you might have a shoplifting case with 2 witnesses in the clinic, but you're having to think about things about, okay, how do I approach this from a factual investigation point of view? What legal motions am I going to file? Is there a constitutional issue I need to deal with here? How am I going to counsel my client about whether to take this to trial or pursue some sort of a plea agreement? All of those things are going to be perfectly transferable to many, many different areas of law. And so, I don't want people to think like, well, it's just the ones who want to go be immigration lawyers take the immigrant rights clinic, and the ones who want to be administrative lawyers take the black lung clinic. There's much more crossover and valuable sort of transferability of skills and strategic thinking that comes from these clinics and externships. Great question.
I will say I'm currently on, I'm sorry, Lisa. I am currently on the job hunt right now, but I will say this summer I worked at the Community Defender's Office of the Eastern District of Pennsylvania in the Capital Trial Unit. And I had a lead above my peers just because of the class offerings at W&L. One of the offerings is done by Professor Nora Dimleitner. It's a newer course, but it's called Sentencing and Policy, where we go through the entire sentencing process and how it differs from state to state and on a federal level, and the handbook. And I had an advantage over my peers because they didn't know much about sentencing. They didn't know how the sentencing process went. And it's these little things in these courses at our school that do provide us an incredible advantage. And I know that sounds terrible to be like, we're just doing cooler things than you guys, but it ended up being that way, where it was like, oh, I took this sentencing and policy course and a lot came out of it, and I was able to apply it to working in the capital trial unit of a federal defender's office. And I know this is kind of trickling into like alum territory, but the reason I got that job was because one of our professors, Professor Speedy Rice, his wife is a renowned attorney, Judy Clark, and she just made a phone call and I was able to have this position. And they were always impressed with the quality of the memos and the research that was done. And that can only, I didn't just learn that on my own. It didn't just come out of thin air. It came from our faculty, and I will always go to bat for our faculty because they really do go so hard for us. And it is just an incredible experience to have faculty that care so much. And I think this also applies in the job hunt. I mean, I can talk to any level of faculty. I can talk to Professor King, Professor Shapiro, who also is the other half of the criminal justice clinic. His daughter she works as a federal defender in Virginia, and he set up a meeting with her, and she was like, oh, I'll get your name out there, and things of that nature. So, I mean, aside from just these externships in these clinics, a big part of it is also our professors and the administration itself. They want to see us win.
In Rodacker.
If you don't mind, we had a question chatted in that I'd love to have your all's take on about time. How much additional time do the clinics take, and can you participate in multiple clinics externships, practicums at the same time. So can you talk a little bit about the time commitment involved in these various activities and trying to balance all of these great choices? And then I do have a few more just as a note that we'll try to work in here before the hour is up.
That's a great question. Maybe I'll ask Professor King if you can just talk about sort of the broader question of how many clinics and how many of these experiences, and then students can perhaps talk a little bit more about how they balanced real lawyering work against their work in other classes.
Sure, great. Yeah, so I just mentioned all these, 6 clinics and 5 externships and all these other amazing classes. And every year, every spring term at the end of your 2L year, there's this kind of process by which you apply for the different programs. And we do a pretty good job. I forget the numbers, but 95% of students get their first or second choice. And, some of the programs are kind of tough to get into because we limit them. There's only 8 students per clinic, and we do that on purpose because it's a pretty labor-intensive process, and we want all the students to get as much attention as possible. Some students have some schools have higher limits than that. We don't. Can you do 2 questions at once? Two clinics at once, sorry. No, not really. You can do, one after the other. Like I think Katie said, there are students who do clinics in their second year. You can do a clinic and then an externship. But they are a lot of work, so if they're 5 the clinics are 5 credits, and that's close to half your credit load, right? That I think works out to, I think we say it's supposed to be about 15 hours a week. I think any of these folks who've been in a clinic will tell you, it's not like if you've got a trial coming up on Monday, you hit your 15 hours and clock out. I think there have been weeks when students have worked, 4 or 5 times that getting ready for a trial, which is just like legal practice, Does that answer your question? David, did I answer what you wanted me to?
Absolutely. I'm going to ask Anna Marie to share, but I have this vivid memory of Katie when she was documenting the zealousness of her advocacy. She just submitted her timesheet to me so that I would know how many hours she'd been working. It was stunning, Katie. But Anna Marie.
Obviously, it left an impression, yeah.
Anna Marie, I know that you have to run to another commitment, but would you like to weigh in on sort of how you balance the rigors of the criminal justice clinic and your other classwork?
I want to be realistic with you guys. It's not just like you'll have the clinic and that's all you'll have. No, you'll probably have organizations that you're a big part of. I'm Student Bar Association president this year, so that's another 20 hours in my week, which I love, but whew. I'm also a law ambassador, which I guess once you become SBA president, they kind of use you a little bit more. A little bit. And then in between that, I also have the other courses that I take, and you can take a practicum and a clinic in the same semester. Like I mentioned earlier, I am in the trial advocacy practicum, and I'm also in the criminal justice clinic. And I think Katie mentioned it earlier that it's not just that you have your clinic and your clinic hours and that's it. There's also a class. There's a physical class that we have to show up to and do individual readings for that as well, which you do get to put into your hour time log, but still, you're still preparing for another class. I will say so far, if anything, I've learned that organization is key. And that's something that's key as an attorney, but once you have clients in the mix, it is key, and these clients want to talk to you. And as an advocate, and I'm learning this slowly but surely, that while it might be something that I consider like a very small issue, right now that is the biggest issue that they're facing in their life, and it's necessary to be empathetic to that and to why they want to contact you so much, why they want to contact you so vigorously. And that's just something that I'm learning, and it's so cool that I get to learn this before actually ending up in a defender's office and being like, I don't know how to handle all of this. And right now I'm learning how to file in personal, file in that personal time, file in that you time, file in that Netflix time. That's step one. But then step two is organization, and it's good to organize, prioritize. I have a trial on Monday. So right now I need to prioritize that trial on Monday, maybe over some other classes. And that just might be how it is for this week. The hours are there. You're dealing with real people, you're dealing with real cases, you're dealing with real research. The hours are going to be there. Some weeks you might do 10 hours and it might be a light week. Other weeks you might put in 20 to 30 hours. Like, it just depends on what's going on with your clients and what's going on that week. So but is it a time commitment? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, it's a law school. Law school in and of itself is a time commitment. And that's just a reality. I hope that doesn't scare anybody, but this is part of the process. Like, yes, you do need to figure out how best to work your schedule. And you should also be realistic about your schedule as well. But yeah, is it a time commitment? Absolutely. Should you take a practicum? Absolutely. Should you do a clinic? Absolutely. Are they going to intercept sometimes? Absolutely. Will you be tired? Definitely.
Thanks so much, Anna Marie. I don't know if Katie or Hannah had, and thank you, Anna Marie, for joining us. Really appreciate it. Katie, Hannah, I don't know if you had anything to add on the sort of balancing act that you have to do. I saw that Ian Braddock asked a question about the veterans practicum. And I know that Professor King has been sort of instrumental in developing that opportunity over the last few years. Professor King, maybe I'd ask you to just briefly, if you could provide a little background on that, and then Katie and Hannah, if you want to jump in after that with anything that you'd like to add, that would be great.
Sure, yeah, no, that's a great story because it's student-initiated. About maybe 3 years ago, students came to me. Like I said, I'm the director of experiential education, so always looking for new ideas and opportunities. And 3 students came to me and said, we want to have a course where we not only learn about the Veterans Benefits Law, where we didn't have a course in that, but we want to actually help some veterans who are not getting what they're entitled to from the government. And, what do I know? I'm a criminal defense lawyer. I didn't know anything about that area of law, but, I met with them several times and we, did some research and found out, how a course like that could work. And then got in touch with, an agency down the Veterans Services Agency, not the VA, the Veterans Services Agency down in Roanoke, which I said is 45 minutes or so from here. And they were really excited about it. And so we brought in someone as an adjunct professor to teach the course. And then the students would get cases, working on actual cases that were handled by the attorneys from this agency. And it's a great course. This year, we sort of switched a little for reasons that are specific to that agency, and the students are doing simulations. They're still learning the stuff, but it's more of a pure practicum just because of some specifics. But we're hoping to go back in the future to how it was initially conceived, where they're actually handling actual cases and litigating those cases with the VA. But it's a great example of, here's some students who saw something that they wanted to do. One thing that's nice about W&L is that it's a small school. It's got a very sort of a humane size and capacity. They could come to the administration and say, hey, can we do this? And we say, sure, let's figure out a way to do it. And so, we're still, that course is always sort of evolving, but it's been a great experience.
Thank you, Professor King. We have another question, but I did want to give Katie and Hannah an opportunity if they wanted to respond to any of that before we moved on.
I think in general, it's definitely doable. Back to the time question. I never met anyone that just could not do it. I mean, you can do it. It's a lot of time, but you're taking fewer actual classes when you're in the clinic because those credit hours, you're taking, 5 credit hours for the clinic. So you may only have 2 other additional courses or 3 other additional courses. You can definitely manage it. I did both of the practicums I believe I was in clinic the same semester I did the practicums. And I was also a research assistant and, doing a bunch of other things too, and found time to sleep and have friends and be a person. So it's definitely doable. And it's a commitment, but it's absolutely worth every minute of your time. So.
Yeah, just to add on to that. So I had a different experience with time-wise. So for the DC program, you are fully away. Your entire semester's credits are taken up by the program. You get 10 credits for the actual externship itself. They're ungraded, and then you get 2 for a seminar. So for the most of the time, it was really just me working a 9-to-5 job, which was actually really nice. It definitely helped prepare me for, coming into the real world and actually working in the real world. And then once a week, we would have our classes, which we would still have to read for. We would still have to do writing for. I would usually do that most of my weekends. But I still had obligations from my journal. So I would still have journal work going on, and I would still have everything. But I mean, because it was mostly just getting my externship hours done and doing my summer courses, it was really manageable time-wise.
So I'd just like to squeeze in one last question before our time runs up. We heard from Amy asking, I think, a fantastic question, whether folks chose their experiential opportunities because of what they knew they wanted to do, or whether they chose experiential opportunities that then informed what they wanted to do. An interesting distinction. I don't know, Katie and Hannah, if you can talk briefly about that.
Sure, I'll say something about that. I am the unusual case in that I came into law school knowing I wanted to do immigration. I had been working as an ESL tutor with immigrants and discovered that I wanted to be an immigration attorney and went to law school for that. I was really the only person that I knew in my peer group that had sort of that understanding going in. So I think it's the norm to have, no idea what you want to do. Is probably better that way because you won't pigeonhole yourself. I had several friends in the immigrant rights clinic, and they came in not knowing whether or not they wanted to do immigration, thought it would be a cool experience, and wound up doing immigration after the clinic, also wound up not doing immigration after the clinic. So there's really no pressure on knowing that you want to do that in the real world after graduation. If you do wind up wanting to do that, it does help. But I don't think you really have to be a whiz at the area or want to go into that field to do the experience and get the most out of it.
So it looks like we might be at time at 1, and I do want to be respectful of folks' other commitments. So maybe I will just take this opportunity to close, thank the panelists very much. Our alums for taking the time from their busy workday. Professor King, of course, Dean Rodacker, thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us today. And please follow up if you want to learn more about any of these opportunities. Again, because we are a small community, we're very accessible, and that's true when you're in the building. It's also true if you're considering W&L. So please talk with Dean Rodacker, and she'll put you in touch with any or all of us. Thanks again for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Dean Baluarte. I want to echo his thanks for your participation. I also want to highlight that this is part of a series. We do weekly Wednesday conversations of this nature. The themes change, but we're always happy to chat with students. So on Wednesdays at noon, and in next month on October the 21st, we'll be doing an overview of all academics, and we'll be seeing Dean Baluarte and Professor King again. So we're looking forward to that, as well as several other upcoming programs. Hope you can attend. Have a great day, and thanks for your time.